Welcome, Alec. I really appreciate you being on the Harder Not Smarter podcast. Alec, you are the CEO of Service to School, a phenomenal organization helping veterans getting into, um, the bread and butter is really MBA programs, or graduate school programs, but you guys do everything from PhDs to undergraduates. And you have a phenomenal career that you can talk about in terms of everything from military to business school to writing a book to running this organization. I'm sure I'm not doing it all justice, but please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Alec Emmert, I'm a Navy vet, served on submarines, and I'm actually still serving as a reservist foreign area officer. And for my organization, Service to School, we've been around for a little over a decade. And like you said, our goal is to get veterans into college, whether it be community college or all the way up to a PhD. But really, like our bread and butter is helping enlisted vets get into undergrad programs. About 70% of our applicants are enlisted, and we've got 31 partner schools, which are some of the best schools in the nation. And we've had phenomenal success getting them into those programs. And these are schools that I personally probably could have never gotten into myself. Your Harvards, your Yales, your Princetons, Notre Dame, Stanford, MIT, and the like. And so our mission really is to just make sure that veterans get the support that they need when they're applying to schools. They go to schools that will set them up for success, and that we do it for free because college admissions counseling is very expensive, and we want to make sure that our veterans get the best service possible on their budget. So that's really kind of us in a nutshell.
And it really sounds like you just have thrived in that academic environment. I mean, you went to the Naval Academy, you have a master's from Georgetown, you got your MBA from Wharton, and then you went and wrote a book on how to get into these types of schools. You're if there's anyone that's going to be more qualified to talk about the admission process, what it takes to get in there, and then also what it takes to be successful. I couldn't think of anyone more successful than someone like yourself.
Here's the irony. So I was not academically successful at the Naval Academy. Like I finished pretty close to the bottom of my class for a variety of reasons, mainly due to conduct, but my GPA wasn't too hot either. Had a 2.85 GPA as an English major, so not a great GPA and a pretty easy major. But my story is really like how I was able to overcome that, and that's the big thing I share with our applicants. Like we've got I was just talking to one of our applicants who had, I believe it was something like a 1.5 high school GPA and went on to an Ivy League college. And really the secret to that is understanding where you were before you joined the military. And in our case, we were technically in the military while we were at the academy, but like not really. But translating how our service helped us grow and showing examples of how we could be successful academically afterwards. So in my case, I did some post-grad work. I studied hard for the GMAT, got a good score, was able to get into an online master's program at Georgetown in finance, which was free with the GI Bill. And it was very academically rigorous. I focused where I hadn't focused when I was an undergrad and got a pretty high GPA and leveraged that plus my GMAT score to get into Wharton. And so for me, it was really kind of like an underdog comeback story. And I like to share that with the vets and tell
I'm
them
sure
that.
Wharton also just looked at you like, this guy has a glutton for punishment. Because let's look at the series here. So you went to the Naval Academy and studied English. And then, for those of you who don't know, everybody who goes submarines has to get basically the equivalent of a master's in nuclear physics because every submarine officer needs to know how the reactor works. So he goes from English to nuclear physics. And then from nuclear physics, he goes to finance. And then finance, he goes to business. So you're just like, I want to learn a little bit about everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like, isn't that what your podcast is called? Harder Not
Pretty
Smart.
much.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not going about this the smart way. I'm going to do really good as a submarine officer by studying English because English will keep me alive underwater.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like just being a glutton for punishment and like finding something I'm not good at. And I mean, I'm sure y'all can relate to this. Like I was like, I'm bad at science, so I have to prove to myself that I can do science, right? So for me, like when it came to service selection, I was pretty, yeah, like I saw like a cross section of everything you can do out of the Naval Academy, and I was really interested in everything. But yeah, my class kind of came of age in the post 9/11 era, and I remember thinking like right before you have to make that decision for service assignment, like what job can I do that will keep my countrymen and women safe? And I realized just like how significant submarines were for that mission, and that's why I wanted to do it. But there was a price to pay. Like I had to make it through nuclear power school, and I'm like, all right, now I'm going to see if I can do this. And when I got there, I did really badly. Like I was the anchor man of my class. Like I graduated with it's 2.5 is the passing GPA at power school. I graduated with a 2.54 GPA. So I was like the lowest person who passed, but I ended up passing. And yeah, and so that was just kind of just being stubborn about it. And yeah, but that experience did teach me really how to study, how to focus, how to learn in class. Like I've got a very short attention span, and so I had to get better at that. And
What
yeah,
type
and
of
so
things
that was,
did you do to get better at it? I mean, I'm right there with you. I am not a classroom person. The best I've ever done in school has been since I've left the military. I got my master's in international relations. I was through a military program that I got credit for, but it was entirely remote, and I was working on one class at a time. And I did great because like, oh, I can just focus on this one thing as opposed to, high school and college where you're doing history at the same time you're doing chemistry, at the same time you're doing leadership, at the same time you're doing all these other things. And like my brain does not allow me to focus on six different things and study well. So what were your takeaways going through power school to like, all right, I can figure this stuff out?
and so yeah, it came down to one like basic thing. It was just like realizing how I thought and learned the best. And for me, it's really like under pressure. And so what I would do basically is cram. And I'm like, all right, so we'd have like basically a test a week. And I was like, all right, this one test, like to your point about focusing on one thing, I'm like, all right, this test is gonna be my sole focus. Like after class every day, we couldn't like leave, we couldn't take our notes out of the building because they were classified. So I just sit there and just like go through notes and just for hours, just try it, like just go through them once, do some practice problems, get them all wrong, do them again, get a few right, and just basically just like rinse and repeat. And then it got to the point where I was at like my final exam, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like outwork everybody. If I spend more time than anybody else in this building, I will through brute force pass this course. And it got to the point where I was like sleeping in the backseat of my car just because I was too tired to drive home. But just like through that sheer like stubbornness and cramming, I was able to make it through.
That's, I mean, that's honestly what I had to do through school. Greg, I mean, you've done a variety of school. You went to UNC for your MBA.
Yeah, I mean, my whole I'm it's like the same thing. That's how I succeed is like just sheer
Brute force trauma.
will. Yeah, and it's just like if I'm doing something complicated, it's like literally just like note taking like crazy, and I write things down and we'll never revisit them again. But for me, it's like just writing something down physically. So there's something about that like just makes things quick in my head. So I spend a lot of time like just like doing like maniacal note taking as I'm reading through content, especially stuff that's super dense. And that's what really I think helps me or helps things stick in my brain, especially when I'm cramming for an exam.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you finished power school, bottom of your class. Where do you get sent for your first duty?
Yeah, and so the nuclear pipeline is it's pretty miserable. So like you do it's like about 6 months of academic work at power school, and then you do 6 months of hands-on training where you have to qualify to operate a nuclear reactor. So they got two of them that you train on in Charleston, and then two up in upstate New York. I stayed in Charleston, so I qualified to operate the reactor as an engineering officer of the watch, they call it. And then after that, you go to about I think it's like a 3 or 4 month course on how to be a like basically drive a submarine, like submarine tactics and all that. So it's about like a year and a half pipeline in the submarine community. And so you go through that whole pipeline, and then you show up to your boat And in my case, I got a fast attack submarine in Norfolk, Virginia, and this is a thing like a lot of people don't really know, but all submarines are nuclear powered. Only some are nuclear armed. Those are the ballistic missile submarines. So I was on a non-nuclear armed submarine. So we call it, fast attack or fast boat. So we do more of the conventional deployments. But when you get to that ship, you're starting over from scratch. Like you got to qualify all over again. Like you got to take all your engineering exams and everything like that. And then it takes you about a year to a year and a half to get your warfare qualification, and then you're finally like a fully fledged submariner. So it's, again, to your point, it is definitely a harder, not smarter way to go about things.
So what does it mean to be able to work a nuclear reactor? Like what does that entail, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so at a high level, so the officer is a supervisor, and reactors are ideally inherently stable, so you shouldn't be doing a lot. You start it up, and then it's a matter of monitoring it, and if there's a change in demand. So if you want to make the submarine go faster, like you have to increase steam demand. So that's like the reactor basically just has to get a little hotter and make more steam. To just trying to be very simplified in a very simplified way. But you've got a person that controls that steam demand. They call it the throttleman. They've got a reactor operator, and I was on a Los Angeles class submarine, so every submarine kind of does it a little differently. And then you've got a reactor operator who monitors the reactor, controls the pumps that drive water through it, and make sure like all the safety protective instrumentation is working right. And you've got an electrical operator who controls the electrical system. So all of these four people, the officers and then three enlisted people, are sitting in a very small little box on the submarine. And you as an officer are supervising them and making sure nothing goes wrong. And if there's a casualty, it's your job to direct each to take appropriate actions.
I think that was the craziest thing when a submariner described to me what a nuclear reactor actually is. He's like, it's just a super fancy steam turbine.
Yeah,
all it's doing is you're boiling water with the heat from your reactor. It's creating steam and spinning shit.
Exactly. Like
that seems
at a
really complicated
level, it's like a nuclear reactor is a hot rock. You run water over that hot rock that makes it hot. That water touches pipes, which touch other water, which turns it into steam, and that steam drives a submarine. And that's pretty much it.
That's wild. That's super cool. I mean, that's crazy. Have you guys, this is like way off topic, but it's like sort of in the nuclear space.
Nothing's off topic on the show.
Yeah, it really isn't. But have you guys heard of Stuxnet? It's like the Iranian centrifuge attack on their nuclear plants, like in, what was it, like the early 2010s? Dude, I'm reading this book that's called, what's it called? It's like, This Is the Way They Tell Me the World Ends. And it's all about like hacking and cyber attacks. And I just got done with the chapter on Stuxnet, and it is like it's absolutely terrifying about like how like they were just basically manipulating the US was manipulating Iran's centrifuges on their nuclear plants, and like the way that they got in there is insane. Like basically we're going to find out in 2039 how exactly they got in there, but there was a USB drive that they think got in there. How it got in there, we don't know, but it got plugged in, and then all of the code like that they had ran on that hard drive or on that USB like just infiltrated the entire Iranian system. And then like they were just like turning up the speed and turning down the speed periodically every month. And then they had like some sort of like a spy movie where they'll like change the tape so it looks like everything is normal going on the security cameras. So they had that in place so that it looks like nothing's going on. So they're just fucking with these people for like years on end and just ruining their nuclear program until it got out. And then it's like, but they're attacking the same system. We're attacking the same systems. Sorry, this is a long story, but we're attacking the same systems that we use in our everyday lives. So like everything that we're using against them, like once they found out, like now the whole world knows that like we can do these things. So, dude, it's opening my mind to like a whole nother world.
Allegedly attacking. Let's be very clear about that. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Not confirmed by anyone.
I don't have any privileged knowledge other than just common sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk me through what it's like on a submarine. I've heard stories, but I love hearing firsthand accounts of what it's like being inside of a metal tube, really a titanium tube, I think, hundreds of feet beneath the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, it's about as sweet as you'd expect, right? like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Because I didn't even do a submarine cruise when I was at school, but it just seemed like
if it makes you feel any better, I didn't do a single marine summer cruise, and I ended up as a marine. So I was like, what am I getting into on this one?
Yeah, no, and I feel you. And so so I just overall it's kind of like Groundhog Day, and I mean you see all these like thriller submarine movies, like you have the Tom Clancy like hunter killer type stuff. It's nothing at all like that. It's a lot of minutia. So at the time I was doing it, they've changed this up since I left, but you do 6 hours on watch, and then you'd have 12 hours kind of off, but not really. So you'd finish up your watch. Your division would have to do maintenance. You'd be like working, to essentially keep the systems up to speed, and within their maintenance periodicity and all that. So they're running. You have to do like a lot of, shockingly, a lot of paperwork. And then when you're on mission, you were just kind of doing reconstructions of the stuff that had gone on your watch, because that's all sent to the smart folks at different agencies who want to figure out what you all saw. Anyway, so that's like the 18-hour cycle. And at some point in there, you try to like nod off and go to sleep for a little bit. So, I mean, you'd go on a 6-month deployment. You'd probably hit port. Like typically you'd leave. I was a Norfolk guy. So leave port, you'd hit a port in the Med for a quick break on the way. Then you'd head over to CENTCOM, usually pull into Bahrain. And then you were just, on missions in the area for like typically about 2 months at a time. And, at that time, you're just kind of going through that Groundhog Day of that 18-hour cycle, getting a few hours of sleep here and there, and just, really just kind of collecting on some bad guys. And that was kind of like your day to day, where it was just very, very monotonous, very, very exhausting, but with like every now and again, a moment of absolute terror interspersed in there just to keep you on your toes. So yeah, that was kind of it.
You have any cool run-ins while you guys were out there that you could talk about? Anything interesting? Nothing ever happened.
Nothing ever happened. Yeah, it was just shockingly a couple deployments. Just went out, came back, did our thing. But nothing at all exciting.
Did you see any sharks or anything like that? Like anything cool like that?
No, like so.
It's
I
like
will
the
share,
Disneyland yellow submarine. Yeah, you have windows.
So some stuff I can't talk about is like the stuff we'd see like out of our periscope. And this like one time we were trying to figure this thing out. Like there's this thing like floating around by this. What is this thing spying on us? Is like, is this a boat? Is this like what is this? And we're kind of freaking out a little bit. We're like, all right, have we been counterattacked or anything? And it turned out it was just like this discarded refrigerator just like bobbing along. But that like one discarded refrigerator that like someone threw off a boat like was enough to spin us up for a good hour or so.
The best, I guess, not analogy, but just tidbit into the life on a submarine. A buddy of mine, when I was stationed in Korea, he was a former submariner. He'd shifted to foreign affairs officer. He's like, I couldn't be on a sub anymore for this one particular reason. He's like, what is the most terrifying thing you can have happen? It'd be a fire inside the tube while you're underwater. So to do everything we can to prevent fires, they manipulate the atmospheric, I guess, percentages. So they normally that the air you're breathing right now is at 21%. Like we drop it down to 18, 17, 16% so that fires can't start. The problem is you're basically making yourself hypoxic the entire time you're on deployment. So like you get a paper cut, it won't heal. You hurt your knee, it won't heal. and you're just constantly tired because you're never getting enough oxygen, and it's just you're almost just barely surviving the entire time you're underwater. And you just keep doing that for 6 months every time you leave, and you're just slowly dying every time you're going out there.
Yeah, yeah, that was it. And then like I remember, yeah, just coming back, like I feel like very awake. Like you feel like really alert when you like got off. You're like, wow, like I felt like I just like drank a cup of coffee. It's like no, it's just because you're drinking, or sorry, you're breathing normal air, like for the first time in 2 months.
Like that's
And there's
healthy.
also like, yeah,
Is there anything that you guys do from like a? I mean, do you guys load up on vitamin D? Like, is there any like, special dietary stuff that you guys do? Any nutritional stuff or
like
that you
I
like a protocol you follow?
like we should, but like we don't. And like that's the thing is like yeah, we're just happy, like honestly we're just happy to eat, right? Like so the cooks will throw out some corn dogs and burgers for us, and that'll be enough. Like they've got like our doc's got had like a thing of vitamins like out of his like outside of his like there's like a little shack that on board that the our corpsman hangs out in. And then like we're like we noticed that like it was like the same like thing of vitamins like when we went on deployment as when we came back. So some submariners are like notoriously not very health conscious. And this is it's funny because there's Kevin, you could probably relate to this. There's I feel like there's a unique culture in the submarine force that has a parallel to the Marine Corps, where the Marine Corps or Marines I've met kind of pride themselves on like not being like into books or reading or being informed or anything. It's just like I don't read books. I work out, right? And in the submarine force, it's like personal health and fitness is viewed like very, very lowly. So like if you're like God, if you're an unqualified junior officer, like being caught working out on the ship, it's like, what are you doing working out? You should be reading, you should be studying, you should be making yourself a better submariner. And then if you like come back like in shape, they're like, look at this guy's got time to work out. It's like the ideal submariner.
Shame the non-believer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like is like an overweight, like very, very well-read, encyclopedic knowledge of nuclear power type of person, but never has touched has touched the treadmill on boards. So yeah, that's kind of our.
That's definitely a carryover from Rickover.
Yeah.
I heard Rickover was so Admiral Rickover was the father of nuclear power in the Navy, and he was just there is a very good chance he's like an Elon Musk type guy. Like he's definitely on the spectrum, but because he had so much authority and he ran this whole organization, like everything is a carryover from. Actually, the best equivalent would be Hopkins. The school's named after him. He was a doctor, but he was of the era when
Johnny Hopkins.
Yeah, he was of the era when anesthesia was just kind of coming about, and what was one of the original anesthesias? Cocaine.
Yep.
And so these guys would experiment on themselves how to use these anesthesias, including cocaine. And so John Hopkins was constantly coked up. And for those of you that have ever done cocaine, you're amped and you can study hours all day and do all this work. And so while he was doing rounds and training the new generation of doctors, he was all hopped up on cocaine, so he never slept. And he was just like a very diligent, hardworking guy. So he was always working, and he expected his residents to be doing the same thing. And so that's why you have this not generation, but like this culture of workaholics in the medical field, where like you're basically going into sleep deprivation to be a resident now. Like you don't need to sleep, just keep going into surgery, even though you've had 3 hours of sleep and cutting people open. It's totally fine. Like, no, that's just a carryover from a coked out generation of doctors. And now we just think that that's normal.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, man. It's a hell of a drug.
It is. So basically, the nuclear fleet's a carryover of Rickover, who is just a super engineering spectrum writing guy, and now everyone needs to operate under him because he was the pinnacle of what everything in the submarine fleet was, and so now everyone needs to be a similar profile, but it just carries on. People are like, why do we live like this?
So yes, Rickover said it. Like, why are we doing maintenance every after watch? Because that's what Rickover said. How dare you? How dare you question? How dare you question the
the
genius of
the Godfather himself. All right, moving on from the submarine life. You're like, all right, we're good with this. I'm gonna go do something else for a little while. I think you said you became a FAO yourself, a foreign area officer, and did some tours around the Middle East and in Europe.
Yeah. So I did my JO tour, and at that point, the Navy works where you fill your it's usually about 5 years, which is your initial service commitment after you go to the academy or ROTC. And they're very, very smart in how they keep people in, because that's like the time when you're done. But they're like, all right, you don't have to stay on a ship. We're going to send you to a shore assignment, which is much easier than what you're doing on the ship. A little cooler. Since you've been so busy on the ship, you likely haven't had a whole lot of time to get your post-military plan together. So in my case, I did the 5 years. I was at the end of my commitment, and I had an opportunity to go to Bahrain for a year, and I jumped on it because I had been there when I was deployed on the submarine and had a really cool experience, because that's kind of like where all this stuff happens. And at the time it was 2010. So it was kind of like peak GWAT time, 2 carrier presence, all that kind of stuff. And you kind of get a chance to felt like being a part of history there. So I jumped on that opportunity. And I was still a submariner. I didn't become a foreign air officer until I joined the reserves. But it was just, kind of an assignment I had, which is get away from the submarine fleet and doing something a little bit more hands-on and operational, something that interested me a little bit more. So got the opportunity to do that. I was at Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain when the Arab Spring kicked off in 2011. And that was a really interesting experience because particularly from a force protection standpoint, because for those of you who've never been to Bahrain, it's a base, but very few people live on the base. The bulk of our forces live out in town. And so what was kind of the middle of a riot zone where there was, heavy demonstrations, there were like IEDs going off in the street. And we had close to about 10,000 personnel, like living out kind of in the middle of that was definitely a pretty difficult problem to solve and figure out how to keep them safe. And so I had a hand in that. So did that for about a little over a year, and then I had the opportunity to go to Italy to be a part of a destroyer squadron there as their ASW officer. There wasn't a whole big demand for my services as an ASW officer, so I ended up getting farmed out to do
ASW's anti-submarine warfare for anyone not familiar.
Doing sub ops. My bad. And then then went over to got the chance to spend a lot of time in Ukraine training their Navy. So that was kind of my post submarine life in the Navy.
Awesome. And at what point were you knowing you're getting out and saying I'm going to use my GI Bill, I'm going to do some continuing education? Were you doing that more because you wanted it, or because you didn't know what you wanted to do and you're like, I need to have some kind of buffer zone before you figure out what it is you're going to be doing for your next career?
Oh yeah. So I didn't want to do a long-term Navy career. I kind of knew that from the get-go. I wanted to serve. I view that as very important, especially post 9/11. I want to do my part to keep America safe. And then after that kind of initial tour, I wanted to go back home and start out on my civilian life. And I was really interested in media, and I still am. Media, television, and all that. And so I started looking around at programs. I was less interested in grad school. I just kind of want to get out and just do it. Just get firsthand experience and hit the ground running. So through American Corporate Partners, I was able to get a backstage role at The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. At the time, they were I believe they still are, very, very pro-vet. Jon Stewart is a huge veteran advocate, and they were trying to get more vets kind of behind the scenes to give our perspectives on the world and on the content that they released, because they wanted to make sure that when they make fun of our policies, they weren't really insulting our troops. They were insulting the people that are making fun of the people who came up with our policies, but not the people who were actually executing them. So had a pretty big role then, just like reviewing content and stuff like that. So it was an awesome experience, but one that did not pay a lot. And when you're in New York City, living off your post-military savings, those dry up pretty quickly. So that was my
So
time.
you're basically the litmus test of, is this joke accessible or acceptable to make fun of our service members, but more of like the leadership service members and not the regular troops?
Yeah, exactly. Like, making fun of, take whatever political leader they were ripping on for their Middle Eastern policy or whatever policy they had at the time, but not making fun of the troops. And it wasn't just me. They had it was a cohort of us. I think it was about a dozen, and so we're giving our perspectives on everything. Yeah. So it was cool. Like we got to sit in the writers' meetings, and then we're just like running errands for them and things like that. So it was a fantastic experience, but at the time, I was in my late 20s and I'd had a taste of some degree of financial comfort, like living overseas and all that. And then kind of going into like a studio apartment in Queens, and kind of barely scraping by made me realize that I loved media and entertainment, but I didn't love it so much that I was willing to sacrifice my comfort and live on nothing to do it. So that was kind of where I hit that that
the sports and media world, they have slave labor, and we were just talking with Craig. Who were we just talking with? Oh, Teddy. He was working for Fox and ESPN, Fox Sports and ESPN. My sister used to work for the 49ers with Levi Stadium, and yeah, they bank on the fact that people want to be there and be around them. Like the compensation is really that you get to be in the presence of these other people, and so they pay you fuck all.
Yeah, tell me about it, man.
You get to hang out with Jon Stewart. We're not going to pay you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like this is like what I've
Consider
realized.
yourself privileged.
Like that is 100% the case. And what I've realized is like how cool your job is often inversely related to how much you get paid for it, right? So working as a consultant, you've got an awful job, but you get paid well for it. Like working in media and entertainment, you do some pretty cool stuff, enjoy your job, but you got to live off of ramen when you get home. So
that's right. You've literally done the full spectrum because you work for McKinsey, and then you've also basically been an unpaid intern for comedians.
You are really a glutton for punishment. Like I've heard probably more people say that they hate working at McKinsey than they enjoyed it. I think it's been a good stepping stone for a lot of people. But
it's like
I've heard a lot of people say that their bodies like physically rejected consulting for McKinsey.
Yeah. No, it happens. And like I don't want to trash the firm. So
we talk shit about everybody. Like I was just shitting on the Marine.
Yeah,
I was shitting on the Submariners. I shit on Marines. I was a Marine. I shit on the Army because Greg was in the Army.
Oh, you should hear our last episode with John Cobb, Alec. We shot on. I think I listed it down. American Airlines, Spirit Airlines, UPS. They all got it bad last. I mean,
oh man, I'm here for it. So I mean, I'll give you like a legit I like to feel a pretty objective perspective on my time at McKinsey, right? And I quit after about 2 years, and there was a reason for it. So I definitely think that for veterans, it's a really good stepping stone because it's pretty miserable work, pretty unrewarding work. Like we're talking, like I was routinely taking 5:30 a.m. flights to go to some small town, in the middle of nowhere, to walk around a factory doing very like unglamorous, unrewarding work. The pay is pretty good, but it's not like what you'd be making in investment banking or private equity or anything like that. But the bottom line is you all are aware of like credentialing, right? And it's like, in the military, if you're like, so-and-so was a SEAL, so-and-so was a Green Beret, you will have never met that person, but you'll automatically have like a very high opinion of them just by that virtue of that credential. Like whether they live up to that, opinion when you first meet them, it's kind of like up to them, but they start, fairly high in your estimation. It's kind of the same thing in the private sector. If you like work at McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, like any of those big name firms, if you come out of there, like you've kind of been weighed, measured, and found, up to their standards. And so people will take you seriously. So as a veteran coming out, like getting that badge on your resume is something I definitely think is worthwhile. Now, and then after that, you do your 2 years of pain. You can get out. You can start a business. It's going to be a lot easier getting funding because people take you seriously as a founder because
Is that kind of the standard? About 2 years at a consulting agency or firm?
Yeah, and it's like, and I saw this with my MBA class. It's kind of like the way to think about it. It's like the military, right? You do 2 years in consulting is like your initial 5 years in the military. It's like you do it, you get the skills, you get the credential, you get the stamp, and then if you stay longer, your stock isn't going like that far up in terms of like exit opportunities or being able to raise money as a founder or what have you. Your money's not really going that much far up until you make partners. So like the way to look at it is like, if you do consulting, and this is the way I saw it, you do it for 2 years if you want to just have that stamp on your resume. But if you want to make a career out of it, you got to stay till your partner. So at that 2 year mark is when you make the decision, and it's roughly like I think a pretty similar attrition rate to the the officer pipeline, where about 80% of officers, give or take, will leave after that first commitment. And it's kind of the same in consulting.
So, question for you: which is worse for your health, life on a submarine or life as a consultant?
Oh man, it's like would I rather be stabbed or shot? Like, no, 100%. No, I'll tell you straight up. Submarines are way worse. And like, I had this like one moment where I was grinding with this like financial model. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like sitting in my hotel room. I was just like absolutely miserable. I was like, F this, like F my life. Like, what have I done to put myself in this position? I'm like, would I rather be here or would I rather be like at periscope depth in the Straits of Hormuz, getting slowly like microwaved by a nuclear reactor? I'm like, yeah, I'll take the 2 a.m. at the 5 hotel.
6 and 1/2 dozen.
Yeah, like 2 a.m. at the 5-star hotel working in a financial model. So submarines are worse, but it's not by much.
It's close. Fair enough. All right, so you finish up your 2 years and you have this idea of I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna do something else. Wait, actually, before that, at what point did you go to Wharton? Was that right after you left McKinsey, or did you go to Wharton and then McKinsey?
Yeah, so I did Wharton. So I did a little bit of a circuitous journey. So I got my business. I started business school when I was 35, which is another kind of motivational thing for your listeners. So there's this whole myth out there that you gotta start your MBA when you're young. Like 30 is like as bad as old as you can get. But I started when I was 35, and I did a bunch of stuff before that because I went from the Daily Show. I ended up getting into the reserves after that. I got a pretty cool MOB with JSOC to the Middle East. From that, I was able to do some consulting work on the private sector in the region. And then I went to Wharton. The reason being that I had just done so much defense stuff. That was my profile, and I needed to have like a reboot. And the easiest way to do that is to go to business school. Like an MBA is like the ultimate Nintendo reset button, where everything you kind of did before that is on your resume, but you have like a whole new world of opportunities post MBA. And there's no better place to do it than Wharton. So that's why I did it. And then McKinsey and then services school.
All right. And so you left McKinsey. At what point did you already have the plan of I'm going to start this services school nonprofit while you're at McKinsey, or did you leave and kind of figure that out through talking with people and hearing pain points?
So I did not start services school. I've been it's been around for like a little over a decade.
Okay.
Yeah, it was founded by actually three West Point grads and a former dean of the University of Chicago's law school. And so the organization predates me, and I actually used them. I was a volunteer ambassador, mentor for enlisted veterans for a number of years. I used them myself to get into Wharton. I had a phenomenal ambassador. He was 160th pilot, Night Stalker, like one of the smartest dudes I've ever worked with. So he was instrumental in getting me to craft my narrative and get me into Wharton. So I was eternally grateful for the organization to the help they've given me. Like we've talked about how unimpressive my academic background was, but the organization enabled me to overcome it. So I was very, very grateful and wanted to give back to it as much as possible. Now, like through my volunteer work for them, through my connections, like I knew one of their founders fairly well, Tim Shaw. And then Brendan Aronson was a classmate of mine at Wharton, and was the former director of MBA ops there. They reached out to me to see if I was interested in taking on the CEO role towards the end of my second year at McKinsey. And at that point, I was like, yep, like this is like the timing could not be more perfect. Like I am through with McKinsey, looking at my next options, and the opportunity to like lead this organization, which has transformed so many veterans' lives, is the ideal next step for me.
Oh, and a quick aside, you mentioned the 160th pilot. I have to say, the 160th guys are the quintessential cool guy nerds. Like they do the coolest missions, but every one of them is like super technical and savvy. And it's like knows everything about the aircraft and is very precise. It's a very unique culture they've created. I want to throw that out there. We need to get a 160th guy on.
We
on
do
the
need
show,
to get
or
160th
girl.
guy.
Well,
Yeah,
I know
those guys are.
I can
You know,
send
let's get one on because I would love to talk with those guys. They're so much fun.
Yeah, I'll send. Yeah. So yeah, my ambassador, TJ Root, awesome guy. He
Is
went
that
to
how
H.
you classify him though? It's like just a cool guy nerd. Like,
I would never call TJ a nerd. I'll leave that. I'll leave that for your listeners to determine. He did give me phenomenal support. Like he would tear my essays apart. Like I'd send it to him, and then it was just like if you ever watched, was it Billy Madison, where like he gives a speech, and then the guy's like, not only was this awful, but I'm now stupider for having listened to it. Like that was like the level of feedback he gave me.
I award
And
you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Mercy on your soul, yeah.
yeah, that was basically the feedback he'd give me. But through that, through that abuse, again, harder not smarter, I was able to write like the essays I needed to get in. So awesome guy. So I'll put him in touch with y'all. And if you hear him on the podcast, that's why.
Absolutely. And when did you write your book?
So I wrote my book during COVID.
And remind me the title again.
Breaking Business School, the Savvy Veteran's 10-Step Guide to MBA Success. I'll put a link to it in your show notes, and it is free on Kindle. And it's like about I think I'm charging like about $10 for it on Amazon if you want the hard copy. If you really want, if you want to send it to me, I'll even autograph it for you.
Sweet.
But
I'll put it right here on the shelf.
But so the book was it was during COVID times. I was wrapping up business school, and I was basically just sitting around my house doing nothing, waiting. It was like they pushed back all of our start dates, so I wasn't starting McKinsey until I think it was like November or something, and it was like May, and so I'm like I can't leave my house, I can't do anything. Like, what am I going to do with my time? And just came up with the idea to just collect everything I had learned from my journey and just put it in a book, and then just put it out there. And yeah, in my case, like the whole story was just how I'd just gone from being a goon at the Naval Academy to being like a Wharton grad / McKinsey consultant. And that's what the book's all about. And it's like, I think even though it's like business school focused, like a lot of the lessons apply to, any type of school you want to go to.
Yeah, I feel like this is a very similar conversation to what we had with John Cobb, where he left the military, was literally living out of his car for a while. And then through, I think he said 9 different schools he went through, starting from junior college. He literally went to what he claimed was the worst,
the worst
college
school in America.
And then he ended up through like Vanderbilt and then Harvard. And then was he McKinsey? PCG? He worked at
No, he was Deloitte.
Yeah, so like he did a very similar thing where he went from basically terrible at school, worked his way up, and then graduated from Harvard with an MBA there. And so yeah, using the veteran experience, and you can probably speak to it more than me, but from what I've heard is especially grad programs love having veterans, love having people with life experience. They don't want to have the person that is the valedictorian. Well, they do, but not as much. The person that was a valedictorian in high school and then immediately went to Harvard, and then they're going to Wharton for their MBA, because they have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but they don't have life experience. They don't know what actually is going on. So having people that have served in the military, done deployments, gone out and worked at other companies, and then are coming back to further their education they probably want it more because it hasn't just been this continuous flow of 2 decades of school. But they have more to offer than just regurgitating what they've read in a book or what a professor's told them.
Dude, that is so true, and that hits on like so many of the points that I've talked to with admissions officers and professors, and like so the big thing is it comes down to one word, and it's humility. Especially like I saw this in my class at Wharton, where there's a stereotype of Wharton students being entitled and arrogant. I'm not going to comment on whether or not that's true or not, but I will say that no veterans were entitled and arrogant, and that comes down to being able to take constructive criticism, like getting a bad grade and going to the professor and saying, hey, I know I've came up short here, what can I do to improve? Vice going to the professor and saying, why did you give me this bad grade, right? And so it's that kind of growth mindset, that humility, and really that the background that we have as veterans is very few of us come from wealthy families. America's 1%, and so when we go to school, we kind of bring that attitude with us of we're here to work, we're here to improve ourselves, and nobody owes us anything. And so that's why schools love us. And then just like one of the comments a professor of mine made at Wharton that really stuck with me is he was a great mentor of mine. I was his teacher's assistant, and he loves veterans. And he said, like, you all are my favorite students. And he said, the reason why I love you is because you are the only people in a given classroom who have had to make a decision that may or may not cost someone their life. And he was like, that level of clarity of thought and understanding the consequences of decisions and actions is something you can't really find anywhere outside the military. And so that's why I just encourage veterans to like give it a shot. Like higher education loves you. And so service school would love to help you, achieve your dreams and get to good school.
I think you were talking about, I don't know if it was a post or if it was something we were talking about before, but just some of the success stories you've had, getting junior enlisted guys that finished their bachelor's maybe online. They didn't necessarily perform stellar in school, and now they're getting accepted into Oxford or Yale or Harvard for grad school programs.
Yeah, I mean, like we see this big time at the undergrad level, where there'll be vets who will have like 1 point something high school GPAs. They'll serve and they'll take some courses like either through community college or online, what have you, but get very good grades because of that maturity they've gotten from their time in service. They'll be able to show like the yesterday today type showed like to admissions officers say, hey, I might have had a 1 point something in high school, but I've had a 4.0 this last semester in community college. And we've seen some of the most selective schools in the country be open to admitting those veterans and just totally forgetting about what they did before the military, viewing the service that they had, the types of schools that they went through, and then their subsequent academic success as kind of the starting point, and disregarding any shortcomings they may have had before that. So that's why we really encourage vets to just give it a go. Like get out there. What you did in high school doesn't matter. Take some classes, apply the lessons you learned in the military, do well, and chart the course for your future.
So I know you kind of touched on it here, but other than reaching out to you guys and getting support, what are the steps that service members should take, whether they're officer, enlisted, undergraduate, graduate programs? What has been the most consistent thing to help admissions teams accept them? What are the types of things that they can start putting together to be successful?
Sure. So like, outside of service to school, like the big thing is mentorship, which is what we provide, but getting full information from people who have walked down that road before you, vets who have gone to college, someone in your network who served and then went on to good college and is doing well, like getting that kind of blueprint for success and what they did, and then understanding where your shortcomings are and taking actions to correct them. Right. So in my case, straight up, like I did not have great grades and I had to figure out how to fix that. And so the way I did that was by replacing those old bad numbers with good new ones. So went to Georgetown, very academically rigorous program, was able to get good grades and show Wharton that I had grown considerably since college, and then also doing well on a standardized test. So I'd say kind of like the big two there are getting mentorship, figuring out what it takes to achieve your goals. And then number two is identifying your weak spots and taking steps to correct them.
And so for guys and girls that are looking to go down this route, they reach out to you. What does the service to school process look like?
Sure. All right. So step one, we'll put a link in the show notes to our sign up page. So you sign up. Again, everything we do is 100% free. So there is no cost. We're not benefiting from you in any way. I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're just here to help. Where people have benefited from the service, we're here to pay it forward. So you sign up. Once you sign up, you will get an email where you can schedule a call with an admissions counselor. And that admissions counselor is someone who has experience in the type of program that you're interested in. So if you're trying to go to business school, you get somebody who's with an MBA specialty. If you're trying to go undergrad, you get somebody with an undergrad specialty, and so on. And then they just basically do an onboarding call where they say, all right, so like, tell me about yourself. Like, what are your goals? Where are you right now in your journey? And if you're at a point where you're ready to apply, they will pair you with a mentor. So in my case, I was paired with TJ, who was at Harvard Business School. And if what have you, they'll pair you with a mentor who is gone a similar route that you want to go. Now, if you're not like at that point where you can apply, they'll like lay out some concrete steps you can get to be application ready. So you'll be ready to be paired. And then we'll also be part of our network where you get email updates on different webinars and different types of advice that we'll be able to provide through our various means on how to best set yourself up for success in the getting ready for that application.
Awesome. And with these programs, what does the give back tour look like? I know you said that you went through it. Now you're serving. You mentioned Brandon Aronson. I've seen a couple of the posts where there's mentors on there that said they've gone through the program, then they come back. If people have gone through either gone through with you guys or they have a good amount of experience, how can they come and support your team?
Yeah, so I'll give a note for the sign up. We love ambassadors. You don't have to have gone through our program to be an ambassador. So initially, I hadn't gone through services school, but I signed up to be an undergrad ambassador. So I was helping enlisted vets get their college essays ready. So wherever you feel like you can be most helpful, if you've got a skill to give, we would love to have you on the team to give back. So typically rely on our applicants to sign up to be ambassadors after they finish the program and pay that forward and keep that cycle going. But you don't have to have gone through the program at all. We're just really looking for anybody who's interested in supporting and has a background that could be helpful to our applicants.
And you mentioned
what does that commitment look like?
So it's typically I'd say about 5 to 10 hours total time per applicant. So you can sign up, and it's entirely up to you. So you can say, hey, I've got bandwidth to support 2 applicants, and 5 to 10 hours over the course of a few months. So it's not a huge time investment, but you talk to our team and say, hey, I can support 1 applicant, I can support 3 applicants, and then if you don't have the bandwidth to support, you can just waive off, because they ask that you'll get a request to be paired with an applicant, and if you just don't have the bandwidth to do it, you can waive off it pretty easily.
Nice.
And you mentioned there's an event coming up, a convention or something.
Yeah. Or, again, I'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. The VetLink Summit. So this is like our main event for the year. So we've got 31 partner schools in our VetLink program. Again, these are some of the most highly selective schools in the country. And we started it last year. It was a huge success. So we're making this an annual event at the University of Chicago. So June 21st through the 22nd, it's going to be a 2-day event with student veterans at our partner schools, representatives from those schools as well. Like typically they're administrators, admissions officers, et cetera. And then we're also going to have veteran supporters who are with companies that are interested in hiring vets, and then also graduate schools. So the way it looks is, day one is an event with our student veterans. They share the insights they've had through their journey from application to admission to actually being on campus and being a student veteran at one of our partner schools. And the intent there is to show just how big of an impact these veterans are making on our campuses and keep our partners energized about having veterans there. And then also the prospective student veterans to let them know what to expect when they get to school. And then the second day is going to be more geared towards the student veterans themselves, where we're going to have career panels for different industries, everything from politics to entrepreneurship to investment banking. And then we're going to have several keynote speakers. So we have one keynote speaker and one fireside chat. So keynote speaker is the one and only Sunny Tai, CEO of Actuate. Very, very impressive person who went from he was grew up as a Taiwanese immigrant, enlisted in the Marine Corps, ended up going to becoming a Marine officer, going to Booth, and then starting a company that's solving a problem of mass shootings through AI. So incredible person to give some perspectives. And then our fireside chat is going to be with Dr. Rajan, who's the dean of the Booth School. So that's going to kind of like the summit in a nutshell. It's free to attend. If you're in the Chicago area or want to attend, you can sign up, and we'd love to see you there.
That's awesome.
We'll have to get this, Kevin. We'll have to get this episode out before then.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, the downside with how we've been running things, to give some behind the scenes on running a podcast, we've been recording about 2 to 3 episodes a week, but for those following us, we release 1 episode a week. So we've fortunately created a bit of a backlog, which is a good problem to have, but we're at the decision point.
Yeah, we'll just do 2. We'll do 2 next week. Let's do 2 next week.
That's true. We could just start dropping 2 every once in a while. But yeah, we'll make sure this one gets out there so that the information is readily available. People can sign up, get out to, and I assume this is mostly in person. Is there a virtual option as well?
Unfortunately not. We're just keeping everything in person for now. There's just the demands placed on making it a hybrid from an IT standpoint would be pretty great to place in the University of Chicago, and then for the RI, and that we just don't know how many people would just be dialing in and all that. So yeah, we're keeping it in person.
Perfect. No, we'll get this out there. So yeah, any veteran or service member, whether you're looking for undergraduate, grad school, PhD, if you're just curious about what type of opportunities are there, what options you have in terms of schools, and just getting basic information from veterans and academic staff members, this is definitely a good opportunity to take advantage of. And is there a cost associated with this one, or is this free to?
No, it's free to attend. And if you're in the Chicago area, it's pretty low lift. But unfortunately, we don't have in our budget to pay for folks' travel. But if you can get yourself a hotel or find someone to stay with, it'd be great to have you there. And then just one little disclaimer here: like the target audience is typically enlisted veterans who are either looking to get their undergraduate degree to start school, or who are already in school. There are on the second day there are some synergies there if you're an officer or somebody who's already out of school, in grad school, et cetera. But if you're looking for the best ROI, it's typically for an enlisted veteran who's kind of in the early stages of their academic journey.
Perfect. Well, Alec, thank you so much for we don't need us. We have enough school.
Knows. Both of you. Both of you guys.
Just a bunch of cake eaters. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and passing along this information. Also for everything you do with service to school. It's a super important resource for veterans and service members to take advantage of, to really get a leg up on the aftermath of their military career. I know a lot of guys struggle, and having that buffer of getting some school in, having some time to think about what it is they want to do, have a little decompression time so you're not jumping directly from serving into the next career. We talk about all the time. I think it's like 75-80% of veterans leave their first job within the year. A lot of it comes down to not knowing what's there, not knowing what the opportunities are. They take advantage of the first thing that comes their way. A lot of time it's because of a dollar sign associated with it. So school is a fantastic opportunity to decompress a little bit, see what options are out there, open up your network, and really experience what your choices are.
Absolutely. Oh, well,
Preach.
thank you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to get on the show and promote Services School. You all are doing great work, and I'll see if I can get you a Night Stalker.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thanks, Al. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks.
Awesome,
All right, you
brother.
guys take care. All right, see you. Bye.